I never particularly liked the Northwest much. I lived on the coast, lots of rain, and I was much excited about getting out of there and starting over, which is exactly what we did. We made one album when we lived there in a 7-inch. And then we got out of there, me and Dale, and basically started over completely in San Francisco. Started the whole band over. And it went pretty quickly for us there. Within like a few months, we had far more than we ever had in the Northwest. As far as like, we had somebody who wanted to put out our records. We were starting to get shows and things like that around there. Weirdly, a lot of the people that I guess it's not weird, relatively normal. A lot of the people that we knew there when we first moved there are all dead. That's just how it goes. Same with the Northwest. I think back about all the people that I knew, a lot of them are dead. The vast majority of them that I knew from the early days, a lot of them are dead. I guess that's typical, fairly. So I feel pretty fortunate in that didn't happen to me. So that's good. But I never had a fondness for the area. I was never particularly fond of the Sub Pop people, or they weren't going much before we left, but I didn't feel much of a kinship with any of that stuff. I have felt a kinship with a lot of the people, like guys like Mark Arm, Steve Turner. I was friends with those guys and remained friends with them to this day. Mark was one of the first guys we ever met when we first started going to shows in Seattle early on. I learned a lot from him. It was great. A lot of different bands and stuff like that. And that was great. But I never really wanted to live in Seattle. Never really wanted to have anything to do with that, and felt like we were on our own. And that was how it was going to remain, and went and started over somewhere else. I would recommend that to people, especially in the early days, is get out of your environment and try something new. I think it forces you to do to be a little more cagey, I guess.
And how much of that sort of like displeasure with the area do you think was actually due to, Seattle or the location itself, and how much of it was just that kind of, you're younger, that impulse to get far away from where you came from?
I don't know. I had nothing to go home to. It wasn't like I had a bunch of opportunities waiting for me, either family wise or business wise or anything like that. I never went to college. I never saw the point. I always thought it was kind of silly. Never understood, unless you wanted to be an electrical engineer or a doctor or something. I didn't really see why would you go to college. Even then, I was like, the world doesn't need more lawyers. I always thought people who went to college were dupes. This is more high school, a lot more expensive. I just never understood it. It was like the weird thing is the guys that I know now that aren't musicians that have done the best financially and didn't inherit money or were not musicians. None of them went to college. Not one. It's amazing. And the amount of people that I know that are actually making money or doing the job that they went to college for is minimal. So I don't know. It's crazy.
I'm definitely with you on that second point. The first one is interesting. I think probably because of where I live and what I do, I tend to be surrounded by people that at least went to, undergrad. What's your sense of why the people who didn't go to college are that much more successful?
I don't know. That's just how it is. Maybe they delay their adolescence, or they continue their adolescence. They delay their adulthood and don't learn how to work. I mean, it's like, if you never had a job or anything like that until after you get out of college, it seems like you don't have a whole lot of idea how the world really works, because you're going to school with a bunch of people and getting taught by a bunch of people who, by and large, don't run businesses and have never have any concept of how any of that kind of stuff works. None. You're probably going to learn more about the job world by talking to a guy working in a fucking factory or a warehouse.
Higher education is a bit of it's a closed loop, right? It's people who went to school to become professors who are just like exists in that university system basically forever.
Oh, they go, well, you go there to learn how to think. Well, you'd like to think that was the case, but the world is filled with stupid, educated people.
The both of you move out to San Francisco, and what are you doing for a living at that point?
Oh, shitty jobs, restaurant work, stuff like that. I mean, I always figured that I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew that I didn't want to go to school, and I didn't want any of the jobs that those would present to me. I didn't really want to do them. We worked really hard on our music, not really with the idea that we were going to make a living doing it, but when it got to the point about 1988 that we got our first royalty check from Boner and we could maybe pay our bills for a little while, Dale and I said, well, what we need to do is give this a shot. And let's try this for now, figuring that we could always get a crappy job somewhere and do it until we can't pay our bills anymore. And we'll continue doing it with the idea of what got us this money that we have right now in the first place, with that attitude going forward. And we haven't had jobs since. So in the 88, when I quit working in 1988, that was far before the grunge explosion or any of that stuff, or Nirvana took off or any of those kinds of things. And because that's always funny too, because people go, well, once Nirvana took off, then you guys did a lot better. I was like, well, actually, I was not working before Nirvana took off. So I don't know. I've always been really careful with my money and kind of thought ahead along those lines. There's nothing I was ever taught, but my strange philosophies about finance and all those kinds of things, as it turns out, when I've talked to other people who explain that kind of stuff to them, they'll go, that's a lot of the same things that Debtors Anonymous tells people, weirdly enough.
So, such as?
Save money, get out of debt, just on and on. All these things that, like, don't try to get off the treadmill of owing someone a ton of money. Don't charge more on your credit card than you can pay off at the end of the month.
None of these things seem too far afield, right? This seems like pretty basic financial advice.
No one ever does it. No one ever does it. You know how many people I know have, $10,000 or more credit card bill debt, and they work. It's just like, what the hell are you doing? I do that kind of stuff too, but it's like if we're on tour, it's always with the idea though that that's going to be paid off at the end of the month. I don't carry debt ever under any circumstance. If I want something, like if I want to buy like this iPad that I'm watching this on right now, I wait until I have the money and then I buy it on a credit card and then pay it off. I don't buy it and then pay it off. Just stupid shit like that. I've always felt that way. My family never had any money. I grew up really lower middle class. I mean, just barely, maybe not even, certainly when I was young, when I was a toddler into my teens, we were well below the poverty line. But I don't think that kind of stuff gives you more incentive or teaches you more or anything like that. I don't believe that, because my parents were really young when they had me. They didn't have those kinds of lessons to give me. So I learned all that on my own. Sure.
But maybe it does instill in you the ability to kind of go without for some time.
Maybe. I'm not sure. I always thought something was going to happen, especially when we jumped off into the deep end with their music. I had nobody to go home to. I had nobody to send me money. And so I got to make this work. And how am I going to make this work? Well, then you start thinking about, what are you going to do to survive as a musician without alienating the fan base that you have and still making it work? It's not just about money. That's what people don't get a lot. It's just about how much money you're making. Well, no, it's not just this money. It's continuing the whole thing. How do you make it? It's like going on tour. I want to establish a really great relationship with lots of clubs all over the world, because I don't want to just play there once. I want to play there a bunch of times. I want to have a long history with them, where you can go back time and time again and have a really good experience, and not burn that bridge by making as much money as you can in one show. That's crazy. That's what people think. That's the attitude when you're thinking of it in a capitalistic way, but it's like, no, it's better for me to think about it in terms of the long term and how that will work, and not alienating everyone around me, and not alienating everybody that I work with, and making sure that all the people around me are taken care of, and on and on and on. It's not just every man for himself, take as much as you can. That philosophy won't work, and it's really bad business. It doesn't work.
People rarely anticipate having the longevity that you and the band have had. Obviously, If you do this thing for 30 to 40 years, you're going to be dealing with the same people over and over again.
You want to, or you're going to be out of business. And it's also being satisfied with what you have and as opposed to what you believe you should have. And it's like, if we all got what we deserved, you'd be in prison after a severe beating, probably. If you got what you deserve.
If karma was actually running the universe.
Right. If you got what you deserved, considering all the shit you've gotten away with in your life, that you never had to pay any consequences for, if you had to pay for all that stuff, that's the best, one of the worst things you can wish on someone is, I just wish that they will get what they deserve. That's it. Not some horrible thing. You don't have to do it. They're already doing it. So it's just thinking it's not going to work. A lot of it, imagining you're going to be out of business in 6 months all the time, and working along those lines and just keeping that going. And so far, so good.
Basically planning for worst case scenario.
Yeah, we're living through one right now. Who could have foreseen this happening? But I always thought, the weird thing, and I'm no scientist, but I always thought when people were talking about stuff like global warming, I always thought, for years, I've thought, I don't think global warming is going to kill me. I think you're going to kill me by giving me a disease or something like that. I'll catch something from you that's going to kill me, not the world. And I wasn't really far wrong in that. And then I heard some guy talking about how in the future they'll look back on us and how barbaric we were for doing things like living in a house or driving a car that doesn't have a virus scrubber, attached to it, and just on and on, all things that they'll figure out. This kind of thing will cause people to come up with very new ideas for all kinds of things we haven't thought of yet. And so the future looks bright as far as I'm concerned. They'll figure something out. It always looks terrible if everything stays exactly how you think it will. It never does.
You can't predict the future, but do you anticipate, or even are you seeing now, have you seen in the last year and a half some hopeful or at least interesting changes to the way people make money playing music that you think might also evolve into the future?
Give me some examples.
Well, I know a lot of people are doing remote shows, and I've heard from a lot of people that venues expect that that's going to continue to be a thing, that, maybe people won't always be as excited necessarily to go see a show in person. Maybe this idea of watching stuff from home will continue in the future.
Well, we did 3 remote broadcasts during this, and we charged $5 per, and not a hell of a lot of people were interested in that. And so I just don't think people are going to tune in for the video experience on any kind of level. Maybe if you're a K-pop band or something like that, it might work. Selling to a bunch of kids who are 14 who probably couldn't go to the show anyway, maybe. But adults are just not going to do it. They're just not, even if it's $5. We charge $5, and every single one of them was less people than the one before it. So it's like, okay, well, and it makes it to where it is so much trouble to do one of those, especially if you want to do it with any kind of quality at all, that it's not worth doing. It's not worth it. I can't find people to work for nothing to get me the really high quality stuff that we want to do under those circumstances. And if you're talking about a remote show of me playing acoustic guitar in my bedroom, videoed on a fucking iPhone, that's not going to cut it. I'm not doing that. No one's interested in that. Nobody is. It might be somebody might be slightly interested in that as a YouTube video, but as a way to make money, it's ridiculous. Unless you want zero quality and quality control and have nothing, it just doesn't make sense. Not at all. I haven't seen it. I mean, we gave it our best shot, and I'm not going to bother with any of that anymore. People just don't care, even for $5. So people go, well, you're charging a lot of money. Now, we didn't charge dick. That's less than going to a movie, and no one's interested. I mean, no one is interested on a level that would make it to where, well, that's a viable option for us to maybe not tour. No, not even close. Yes, we made money on it, but not anywhere near as much for the trouble that we had to go through.
The album that's coming out, that's what, your second or even like third release of the pandemic?
That'll be, well, we had a lot of releases during the pandemic, a lot of limited edition stuff. And we had a new Melvins album that came out on Ipecac in February. That was Melvins 1983, which is the original drummer and Dale playing bass, Working with God. And then this new thing is a 4-album acoustic 36-song release that we recorded during the pandemic that's coming out that we're all very proud of. We worked really hard on it, and it was really fun to reimagine all the songs on acoustic. And we worked really hard on the vocals. And I think the vocals are really going to sell this thing to a lot of people because that's not something that people have really paid much attention to up till this time. And I think that this will show people that actually we can sing and that they just hadn't noticed. We'll see. That's a 2.5 hour time set.
Is it that you hadn't focused as much on the vocals before, or is it just that that it's harder for the listener to focus on the vocals when they're not as upfront?
No, we've always massively focused on the vocals. It's just no one paid attention to it. It's always been there. Maybe they'll notice that now. I mean, especially with big business guys, we did a hell of a lot of that kind of thing. People kind of noticed it, but we sing a lot better than we're given credit for. How about that? Especially on the last record, we did on the Working with God record, we did a cover of the Beach Boys' "Get Around," so "Fuck Around." Getting those harmonies right was tough. That was the hardest song on the record.
I'm one of those like obsessive fans who's listened to all of the isolated vocal tracks of the Beach Boys, like the amount of work that goes into a single song. I can't even imagine how difficult it is to put down. But I mean, how closely were you attempting to approximate the original song?
Well, we kind of knew what to do, just had our instinct instinctually. And I kind of had cut it down to like 3 or 4 different parts and see how that goes. Try that. The music wasn't incredibly difficult. The Beach Boys music itself isn't incredibly difficult. It's the vocals that sells that stuff for sure.
Oh, certainly that era was a lot simpler.
Right. The actual beach era, although
the surf era.
Yeah. A surf era, but even on Smile and stuff like that, there was still surf stuff. To some degree anyway.
Sure, but they weren't singing about like hanging out in their woodies.
No, but the music is fairly simplistic. It's kind of like Chuck Berry crossed a tiny bit with the Ventures, maybe.
The harmonies are always the hard part to nail.
That was tough.
That's the real genius.
Yeah, so I laid down the main vocal first, and then we dicked around with how we were going to do it. And that's a song we spent way more time on than any other song on the record, by far. I mean, same with this. This thing, we get the music done pretty quickly, acoustic and the bass and the acoustic and the drums. And then we spent way more time figuring out how we were going to sing it all. And that just took a lot longer. It just does. I don't know why. Just normally for us, that's kind of how it goes. Vocals are important. They're very important, especially with a band like us where we're playing, like a cross between, it's basically heavy metal Captain Beefheart with some Throbbing Gristle thrown in there. And you want to kind of add something else to it. That's the secret weapon, I think, in our stuff is that we're capable of doing that. Those guys I play with are super great players and they're good singers, and they can pull off pretty much anything I throw at them. So that's really nice. It's really great. I feel very fortunate being able to play with those guys.
Was this kind of your big quarantine project, putting this together?
I didn't really come up with it until during quarantine. Well into quarantine. I mean, like into last summer, I guess. I guess
maybe a better way of phrasing it is this something that could have only really happened that you only really would have come up with during the quarantine? I
had put out a solo record, Gift of Sacrifice, that I was going to tour on and everything, and the pandemic destroyed that. And so I kind of already had this acoustic thing on my mind. And then the original plan was that I was going to do that record with Trevor Dunn. And that would come out in the spring. Me and him would tour it while Red Cross was touring with Stephen and Dale. And then the Trace Cabrona or the Working with God record would come out in November. And then that next spring, we would hit the road and have a new Melvins album out that we could tour. But all that got shake-handed, and all my touring got shake-handed. And then that record got pushed back to August. And so then the Working with God record got pushed back to February. It was weird. Like during the pandemic, or the distributors said that you can go ahead and put that record out, but any returns or anything that comes back, you're paying for all of it. So it's like, okay, well, there's a lot of understanding there, and so that pushes the whole thing back. They were just like, we're not taking responsibility for it. So you do what you want to, but anything happens on this, because we don't think any records are going to sell during this. you're the one that's going to get fucked. So I had no choice but to wait till August to put it out. And then since I can't tour it, it just kind of falls by the wayside. So that was kind of unfortunate. So I kind of had that in mind, acoustic stuff. And so then we'd done a little bit of that, playing acoustic live with the same kind of setup. And Dale playing with brushes and acoustic guitars. And so then we just started doing it. And I go, let's just start laying down some acoustic songs and see what happens. We have songs and a few covers that we wanted to do. And once we got into it, I was like, single album, it just seems kind of like a nothing. Double album, it's a little better. Let's do 4 album. Double. And so, but that seems more ridiculous and like a much bigger thing than a double. Even a double album is not, it's cool, but 4 albums is about what we want. They're roughly, if you look at like what if you go by vinyl, anything much more over 18 minutes on a side really starts cutting into the quality of what it sounds like terribly. And so I think they're all around 18. There's one that might be close to 20. That's how we timed it out, retrospective across of it. And so we would go into the studio and I would have an idea for a couple of songs that we wanted to do that day or whatever it is. So we have our own studio with this guy, Toshi Kasai. And we would go down there and work out a version of the song on acoustic and then maybe redo the guitars, re-record them once we got the drums done. But Dale played all that drums with brushes, which is massively impressive. There's no drumsticks in the whole record. And then we did a lot of things to the drum set, like muffling it a little more to give it a little weirder sound, all kinds of things, all kinds of tricks to make it sound less like a full drum set and still let him be able to hit it like he normally would, but doing it without sticks. So we really gave him a couple of challenges too, like Evil New War God has to do all the drum solos with brushes. That's tough. It's like, that'll just blow by people and they won't notice, but it's like, I've saw some things where people are like, well, the regular drums don't really fit in with the acoustic guitars. And they're not really regular drums, regular to you, but that's not what he's doing. There's no drumsticks in the whole record. That was cool. And then once I got into it, we're like, this is kind of good. I kind of like this. This is really fun. And then we also thought, we honestly have no idea what touring is going to be. We have no idea. And so if we have an acoustic record out, the only way we can tour is something like that. Then we have a product for it and we have a thing that we can go out and tour with. If it goes back to normal really quickly, well, we still have this really cool 4 album thing. So that was kind of our thinking.
It sounds like you weren't 100% sure until you maybe got a couple of songs under your belt. Yeah, well,
I knew we could do it, but I didn't come up with a 4 album thing until we were well into it. At first, it was just like, maybe we could do it, and then we just kept going. And I was like, no, we got to do something huge. It's going to be 2.5 hours, 36 songs. Anything worth doing is worth overdoing.
Did you get the sense that you were really kind of rebuilding the songs from the ground up?
Yeah, fully. Reinterpreting them for acoustic and for vocals along those lines. And we didn't care. Well, we normally don't care. The albums are just suggestions.
What does that mean?
That means that we're not married to the way they sound on the record. I've always thought that our fans or music fans in general should be smart enough to know when they're listening to a record or listening to a recording versus going to a live show. I don't expect a band to sound exactly like they do on their records. I mean, one of my favorite bands, if not my favorite band, is The Who. And one of their best records is Live at Leeds, which is totally different versions of. And so I knew from an early age that was okay. That's not verboten. That's fine. And they did. Arguably, it's one of their best records. And it's all live versions, which are completely different than they are on the records. I love that. And then the other thing I saw with Pete Townsend was a long time ago, 40 years ago. There was this record that came out called The Secret Policeman's Ball. Mm-hmm. And Townsend doing Who songs. And it was Drowned, Pinball Wizard, and Won't Get Fooled Again. And it was so cool. I just thought, oh my God.
It was acoustic, right?
Yeah. And him singing acoustic. I was like, this is good because these songs are good. It doesn't matter how he does it. It's good. And so that's kind of what we were about. These songs are good. They have a powerful, heavy message to them, no matter if I'm playing an acoustic guitar or not. And I did that a few years ago, five or 6 years ago. I did a whole tour where I put out an acoustic record, This Machine Kills Artists, and did a whole tour where I played Melvin songs and my own songs. And I proved that it could work. No problem at all. People were surprised. I'm like, oh, why are you surprised? It's so funny. It's like, what do you think it was going to sound like? I don't know. So many of those people, though, like metal people or punk rock people, if they pick up an acoustic guitar, they immediately sound like fucking James Taylor or Woody Guthrie, which is it's like, that's not me. So I never wanted to do that.
Were the majority of your songs written on acoustic guitar?
A lot of them have been.
I mean, that probably helps ultimately, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't remember which ones were. A lot of them are written on acoustic electric guitar, where I'm just playing the electric guitar acoustically, and then I come up with a riff and record it. But I have so much material from doing stuff like that over the years, literally hundreds and hundreds of riffs that we haven't even gotten to yet. So I don't know that we will. That's another funny thing. People think that, oh, they're new album, it's all new songs. It's like, well, they're new to you. No, they're not new to us.
Is your catalog of unrecorded or unfinished songs, is it largely riff based?
Some of them will be turned into songs, but most of them, the vast majority of them are crap. They're just never gonna see the light of day because they're not very good. At some point, I'll be playing something and I'll go, that's cool, and I'll record it so I don't forget it. Go back to it. I don't know. I would say 90%, 90 to 95 never gets touched. It's just not enough.
Were there ones that you attempted from the catalog that just couldn't turn into acoustic versions? No,
everything worked. Everything we tried worked. Some of them I might have jammed on myself at home, or I just think about it and go, yeah, we could do that. And then another thing with us is if we come upon a part that we can't do, it's on the record, then we'll just change it. Just change it. No big deal. We don't feel married to that stuff.
So what was there a fair amount of rewriting in that sense?
Well, if you listen, yeah, a lot. If you listen to, not because we couldn't do it, because we just, oh, that's cool, I like it. Or like if you listen to a song like I Flies is our first record, halfway, as soon as the song's done, then it goes into a song by Free. So we married those together, and that was fun. So we did stuff like that, figuring out, a wide variety of ways to play the songs. A lot of them are different than they are on the records. That's for sure. I'm fine with that.
How much of your songs continue to evolve as they lived on beyond the recording as you played them live? Do you get the sense that any of them have really kind of taken on radically new forms?
Oh yeah. A lot of times we'll, I don't spend a lot of time listening to my records. So a lot of times we'll be playing a song live. And if I do happen to listen to it, I'll go, oh, we're playing that completely wrong. I forgot about that part or whatever. And then me and Dale we're just not that concerned with that kind of thing. The live is a vibe. It's a vibe thing. It's not about playing everything perfectly. I mean, music is art, and art is communication. Even if you're not completely sure of what the meaning is, all good art is communicating something, whatever it is. And really, when you go to a live show, what you're giving people, to me, and what I want when I go to a live show is the human element of the performer getting up there and doing something with the attitude that they know something that you don't know. And that's what's magical to me about it. It's like, I want to go there and see whoever it is and have them showing me something I just am not aware of in my normal life. And it takes people out of their normal existence that they normally go through and transports them to somewhere else, even for a moment. That's what's cool about it. The same thing with movies, same thing with painting, but nothing moves me more than music does, ever. Movies to some degree, but because they have music. I mean, music is as old as civilization itself. For some reason, rhythmic pounding or whatever, and singing, for some reason, it strikes us and has for literally thousands of years in a way that makes us feel somehow special. I don't know why, but it does. To me, it's magical thing. And I want to go out there with my music and make as magical an experience for people as I can and try to give them something that they don't normally get from music. Be a different kind of band that's giving them a different kind of thing, whether it's our records or our live shows, that we're just different than what, and give people a reason to come and spend their hard-earned money to see us or buy our records because it's worth it. That's the sole goal of the whole thing.
I haven't really heard it contextualized like that, but it makes sense that, maybe the reason why watching somebody play an acoustic guitar in the room on their iPhone doesn't necessarily translate to the audience is that there's no escapism in that, right? If I'm home during a pandemic and I'm watching you be home during a pandemic, it's not really getting me out of my head.
Especially it's like, oh, it's live. Well, how do you know it's live? I could have sit there and did 50 takes of it. I can't do 50 takes if I'm playing a show in front of you in Dallas, Texas. That's it. I get one shot at it. That's the cool thing about it. The human element you can never translate onto internet or onto film in a movie. You can't do it. Something like Stanley Kubrick was amazing, but some of those takes in his movies were over 100 times. You don't get that live. You don't get that opportunity to do it until you get it perfect. In the studio, you do to some degree, but you don't get that. That's the thing that you're not going to, the live juice is the human experience. And that's what's so cool about it. It's why people want to go. We've done it north of 2,000 times on stage, and I don't know how many shows I've seen. I know what that feels like. I mean, sometimes live shows for us, we put them into thirds. A third of them are really, really good. It's like, oh my God, that was great. I didn't even have to think while I was playing. It worked perfectly. A third of them are pretty good. And a third of them, you just feel like you just can't do anything right that night for whatever reason.
The percentage is that high?
It's a third. That's what I would say. You never can depend on when that's going to be. But that's just your experience, because then you talk to people after the show and they'll go, that was the best time I ever saw you play. Or something that doesn't go. I've never had it be, I thought the show was bad, and have somebody come up to me and go, yeah, it seemed like you guys are struggling. It doesn't, it doesn't really happen that way. I mean, sometimes things will happen that are beyond your control, like, technical difficulties, your amp blow up, or something that can screw up the momentum of the show. But I think people by and large understand that. But for us, it's like, I'm not concerned. Like if monitors go out or I don't throw a fit on stage. I do my job. I'm there to do my job, and my job is to play as good as I can every single night to the best of my ability and try to make it as cool as possible and not get hung up on things that the audience has no control over. Like, I can't hear anything through my monitor, and freaking out. I watched Motorhead do that one time, and it cemented in me how ridiculous that was, because if the monitors go out halfway through my show, I'm not quitting. I'm just going to have to deal with it. I'm just going to have to deal with it. Just be a professional and deal with it. I watched them bitch at a monitor guy for 2/3 of their set at a festival. They have thousands of people waiting for them to play. I'm like, I'm never going to do that. Never. What I'm doing, I have to be able to get past those kinds of roadblocks, or it's ridiculous. The audience paid to see them play, and here they are acting, and they're just looking like a bunch of idiots. I can't hear this. I can't hear that. It's like, yeah, no shit. You're Motorhead. It's not a fucking opera.
The other side of that too is something that I think about a lot too, as it pertains to my own stuff that I put into the world, which is learn to take the compliment. Like if somebody tells you it's a great show, you can't say, oh, this sucks. You can't say this thing that you paid money for and that you enjoyed was shitty for the following reasons. Yeah,
I never do that. I always assume that it's only me that felt that way, because I'm not out in front of the PA. I don't know what it sounds like. I only know what it sounds like for me on stage. That's it. And a lot of these people, not a lot, but it's a fair amount of them have never seen us before. They don't know what to expect from us. I don't want to ruin that for anyone. I appreciate each and every person that has any interest in what we're doing. I love it. And I'm always nice to everybody unless they're assholes. I'm never, ever mean. You're not going to find anybody that's going to go, oh, he was an asshole to me. No, you were an asshole. You were drunk and you're acting like a fucking dick or whatever. And I'm not going to take that from you. But if you're a polite person and you just want to talk to me about what a fan you are or whatever, I have time to do that. No problem. I'm going to do the best that I can under those circumstances.
There are nights when not only does it not go well, but you're not feeling well, and maybe like you don't necessarily want to be there that night.
Yeah.
It's hard to be nice sometimes when you're like, oh, I'm on tour and I'm sick and this is night 300 and tonight didn't really go well. I don't necessarily want to hang out at the show and shoot the shit with you.
No, I don't go out looking for it, but if someone's there, I have no problem. Like we don't do meet and greets or any of that kind of stuff. I never do that. They just seem corny to me. I don't want to do that. I just don't want to do it. But if we're leaving the club they happen to be there, or they want to have waited and want to talk or get me to sign stuff, I have time to do that, whether I'm sick or not. And I can tell them, oh man, I'm not feeling very good. And then usually they'll go, oh, we couldn't tell, So just leave it. I believe them. There's no reason for me not to believe them. I love to do it. I love that they're there. That's the most important thing. And like people can go, and it doesn't matter what it is. You can go on and on about music, whether it should be on vinyl or streaming or whatever it is. The most important thing is the music. The most important thing is that people are listening to it, and I don't care how they're listening to it, whether it's vinyl or whether it's streaming or whether they want to come to a live show or they have any interest at all. That's the important thing here. That's it. And as long as I keep the attitude that I've always had and move forward with new ideas as far as what we could do to further those kinds of concepts, I don't think I can go wrong as far as that's concerned. But when I start thinking, I know what people want, I'm going to do that. I don't know what people are going to want, and I'm not going to pretend. I just do what I do and do it in a way that's not perverse. Like, I'm going to make this record just to be an asshole. I've never, ever done that. I've only ever put out records that I like. People just don't understand what kind of vast palette of music that we like. They don't have any idea. I mean, I would never do that. I would never, ever do that. But we're also very artistic when it comes to that kind of thing. And I'm not against artistic concepts. I like that kind of stuff. I've said it before, but we operate as a band in a way that we would appreciate as fans. I would appreciate bands that do the kind of stuff we do. So I figure there'll be other people out there that will too. That's it, really. Just keep moving forward, keep your feet moving, don't stop. Andy Warhol said something I really liked a long time ago, which was, while they're discussing what you just did, get your head down and continue making more art. Right. And plant the flag over here and let them come around it. Don't try to find them and plant the flag there. Just keep doing your thing and doing it on a quality that's high. It's not going to be millions of people, but it's going to be enough.
You mentioned early on in the conversation that from the moment that the two of you really started taking things seriously, and I think you said kind of jumped off the cliffs or jumped into the deep end, that there haven't been any, that financially you've been able to continue to do it. But, in the, again, 30 or 40 years that you've been doing this, were there ever moments when it felt like there wasn't going to be another record, or there wasn't going to be another Melvins record, or that it just wasn't something that you could necessarily continue to do forever?
Yeah. And then those times is when I needed to get rid of a member. That was the problem. And that always worked.
That's got to be tough though, right? I mean, that's hard. It's hard to fire somebody.
It's not my favorite thing in the world to do, but the hardest one was with Kevin Romanis. That was the hardest because he really hated our guts for it, but it was for his own good as a result of his extracurricular activities. And he hated us for years and years. But I knew it was the right thing to do. And then we're friends now. And he came back way later and said, had you not done that, I would be dead. And I was willing to let that go and let him hate me because I just couldn't be a part of it anymore. And so now we're friends because he realized those kinds of things. And then he apologized to me in a way that didn't include the word you, but you did this and you did. No, it was a real apology that I could accept. And that's all I'm ever looking for as far as that kind of stuff's concerned. I have no interest in keeping it going, but there's plenty of people who've been around our camp who have no interest in doing that either. So that's fine too. That's their trip, whatever that is. But me and Kevin are friends, and we've worked together on a wide variety of things. And our band is toured with the band he's in now, and that's all I ever really wanted was for him to be okay. That's it. I couldn't be involved in it anymore and have it not work out. So those kinds of things happen. But when that was the hardest one. When we got rid of him, that we were very discouraged fellows, Dale and I. And I wasn't ready to pack it in, but what I was ready to do was try something totally new. And that's when we got the Big Business guys, 2 drummers, start completely over, reimagine the entire band. And then we did that again with, not because of, we didn't kick anybody out, but at that moment, what we said was, me and Dale we're never going to hire anybody solid member again. Whatever me and him do is the Melvins, and whoever we're playing with is the Melvins too. So everybody has that understanding that you can play with us, but we've been at this for too long to get that emotionally attached to any of this kind of stuff. It's too hard at this point. So then we could do stuff with Trevor Dunn, like the Melvins Light, where we reimagine the Melvins with the stand-up bass player and do all kinds of things along those lines. And it just made it way easier. We can play with Steven, we can play with the big business guys, we can play with Trevor, we can play with anybody we want to, and it's all good. That's really, I really don't think that would have worked until we'd already been a band for more than 20 years. That kind of gave us that leeway to be able to allow that kind of thing to happen. But I just can't deal with that kind of emotional stress ever again. It's too difficult, especially with people like Trevor. Trevor has his own gig with mass amounts of stuff he does. He does tons of jazz stuff and is in all kinds of other, great. He's got his focus on that. Steven's got a lot of things he does, as well as Red Cross, which we were big fans of. And Dale plays the Red Cross now too. So we had no interest in that stuff. So it's just like, no, you keep your thing going. You can do stuff with us too. And we can do the Melvins 1983, and just a lot of stuff like that. It makes it a lot easier, a lot less stress, a lot of pressure taken off, which I'm a bigger fan of than putting all my eggs in one basket.
It's like realizing, a few years into a marriage that the secret to that longevity is being polyamorous. Go out and meet other people and do these other projects and realize that you will come back to this thing.
Yeah, well, the thing about that is, I couldn't handle that with my marriage. I've been married 28 years, and it's like,
sure, it's not a perfect analogy, but I think there's something.
We're making this commitment. That's it. I'm willing to do. You should be willing to do what I'm willing to do. So far, it's worked. But I like that kind of commitment. I'm very, me and my wife have been married 28 years, and we always joke to the same person. That's always the funny part. Believe me, in 28 years, how many people we've seen get married, divorced, married, divorced. It's like, why are we still married? Divorce seems like the thing to do. I'm committed to that the same way I'm committed to the band. And although I feel like the greatest accomplishment I have is my marriage by far. And I like the idea that someone that I'm so attracted to, both physically and mentally, is attracted to me too. So that was I felt like I won the lottery, and I was able to at least have that happen, which is very nice. And I'm not about to screw that up. I mean, I realize I'm a weird, eccentric guy, and women that are willing to put up with me and what I do for a living, they don't grow on trees. So I'm not going to take it lightly. This is a strong partnership, and I love strong women. I love it. And that's very exciting to me, and very attractive.
She's a graphic designer, right? So she has some insight into your world.
Yeah. And she does most of our record covers, has since Stoner Witch, which is great. We work side by side on lots of stuff along those lines. She does letterpress printing and all kinds of things. She's a very complicated and dynamic woman. So it's a very exciting thing for me. And I couldn't be happier in the situation I'm in. And that's been the case for damn near 30 years. So there you go. What can you say? I'm an old fashioned when it comes to that kind of thing.
Have you made any progress on the memoir during the pandemic?
Yeah, I'm still working on that stuff slowly but surely. I'm not sure exactly what, I feel like I have to get it all out first and then edit it down to something else. And I'm not working with a ghostwriter, so that makes it harder too. So it's kind of like figuring out how to do it all.
Yeah, you mean you need to do like a once over, get every story you want to tell on paper, and then go back and figure out
what's important about this, how exactly I want to do. I also focus a lot on photography, which I'm a big amateur photographer, which I love. A couple of years ago, I started an Instagram page, which I haven't done anything with since May, but I think people were kind of surprised at the level of photography that it was on, to the point where Revolver had me shoot the cover with Patton, which was great. I could prove that I could actually make that work. That was nice. But so I have a photography book coming out too at some point. That's one of my favorite things. Has been since I was a kid. I always just took pictures and never showed them to anybody. So, and then once digital photography came around, then I was able to take as many as I wanted. I could rarely afford much developing and all that kind of stuff. I didn't have the money to buy a home developing kit or any of those kinds of things, or super fancy cameras. I have pretty good cameras now, but I don't have cameras worth thousands of dollars. They're worth hundreds of dollars.
Having these side projects, these non-musical side projects, is that ultimately also helpful when it comes to making music?
Oh, I think so. It's all art to me. I also love exercising and playing golf and stuff like that, which is a tough. I don't know if have you ever played golf.
I've never played golf.
Fucking hard as shit.
I mean, I've hit through the windmills, but I don't think that counts.
Well, it's a different kind of golf. You know, it's still fun. I mean, if there was one right in front of me, I'd do it. But golf is a solitary sport. It's not a team sport, which I like a lot. And I was determined to figure out how to do it. That's another thing that I do. And I do it with as high a level as I can. And I play pretty good, considering. I mean, probably like an 8 handicap or something. So
I was listening to an interview that you did, and you are the only person that I've ever heard talk about this book before.
Oh my God, that's the best rock book ever written.
You're the only person I've ever heard say that. And when I moved out to New York and I didn't have any money, I moved out here to write about music. I was interning at Spin at the time. It was like checking out every rock book. And yeah, this is Dark Stuff by Nick Kent is my all-time favorite.
It is the best rock book ever written. He's a master. Did you read his autobiography?
I did. I read his other stuff. I liked it, but I don't know. Maybe it's just the distilled stories that are in this book. Far and away, my favorite book of his.
Oh, I really liked Apathy for the Devil. I thought that was great. Autobiography is great. It's hilarious. It's just self-deprecating through the whole thing. But Nick is. I think he's the best rock writer of all time. I don't think anybody comes close. Who'd be there?
Lester Bangs was. Yeah, I'm looking at my wall over here. Yeah, Lester Bangs is on there.
But most of them are people that don't sound. The thing that's good about Nick is that you can tell he's a fan first. He's a fan. And no matter what kind of crazy shit he writes about Brian Wilson, he loves the Beach Boys. No matter what he writes about, Rocky Erickson, he loves Rocky Erickson. That's the thing. He loved Led Zeppelin. He loved on and on. He's a true fan. I felt that way about Lester Bangs too, but I think that Nick Cave did it better.
Nick Kent was a little bit like this, but the thing about Lester Bangs, and this is a failing of like a lot of rock writers, but a lot of just artists in general, is that he wanted to be a rock musician so bad that I think that ultimately was kind of his downfall.
Yeah. Well, Nick was a rock and roller to boot as well.
Yeah. Lester Bangs, you got the sense he was like on the outside looking in and really wanted to be on the inside looking in. Yeah. And Lester for sure. But Nick, you're one of the only people I've ever heard talk about Nick. Nobody ever says a word about him. I find the stories I find the most interesting are the kind of the what happens after the fame stories. And this is like shoot it into my veins, distilled. I was talking to somebody else reading it was like a 3-part Churchill biography, and I was only interested in the last part because it's always the sort of like the downfall in the last years for whatever reason. Obviously, we're not talking necessarily like the end of Iggy Pop's life here, but like those years when things are lean and you're on the other side of it, that's always been the most interesting to me.
Oh yeah, and his writing is funny. If it wasn't funny, it wouldn't be anywhere near as good. It's funny and it's right. And you can tell how genuine it is. I just love it. I think he's, like I said, the best and unheralded, I think.
I'd never heard his name. I just saw him on a shelf and picked it up one day and started reading it. Like I was completely unfamiliar with it and was blown away. Yeah. As somebody who is like the memoir that you're working on, as you've said in other interviews, is influenced by him and his writing. I've got the Dylan book here too.
I wish.
Which
I can only hope. No,
the Dylan book is there somewhere too, and I think he does a really interesting job, like actually writing a book. You know what I mean? In a way that like memoirs aren't books, is what's interesting about that one. But drawing these influences from Nick Kent specifically, do you get a sense of like how that will play out in the memoir that you're working on? Yeah,
it's pretty self into. Not so much a history as it is, what am I thinking when I'm doing this? It's like, I have one section in there, it's called The Most Important Tour I Ever Did. Why it was the most important. What was I thinking when I was doing it? And to really break that down, I really have to sit there and think. But what I have an ace in that I show it to Dale. I go, is this right? And he'll read and go, yeah, that's 100% right.
You had somebody who was there with you for the entire journey.
Am I wrong about this? Am I missing something here? Is there something in here that I don't have? No, you're right. That's exactly right. And the funny thing is with Memories, especially as much history as me and him have, we know stuff happened. But at this point, I'm not sure if I said it or if he said it. And neither is he in a lot of stuff. Did I do that or did you do that? We're not sure. So you just do the best you can. It's the same with the original Melvins drummer. Me and him have so much history going back all the way into high school. It's like we know about certain incidents, but when you start breaking it down to what exactly happened, it's like, did I do that? Did you do that? Did I say that? Did you? It's like, well, we know it happened. So then you write about it along those lines. I think it's I don't know how interested people will be, but I think there's a story there in that weird kid thinks about music in a way that eventually influences and changes music on a global level, has some story.
I'd say so.
Yeah. And then the idea that those ideas that I had well before they took off, I had to just keep going with this idea that I wasn't wrong. I'm not wrong. And I wasn't wrong. What was missing in music was exactly what I thought was missing in music. As it turned out, that was correct.
It's probably hard to distill, and it is kind of an abstract idea, but what were those ideas and what was missing?
I just felt like the power of music could be there in a way that wasn't punk rock and it also wasn't heavy metal. There's an in-between. Because most of these crossover bands just sound like heavy metal bands to me, or sound like bad hardcore bands. There's a difference. And what it ends up being is more like, heavy metal Captain Beefheart or heavy metal Pixies, which is kind of what Nirvana was. Heavy metal version of the Pixies. And like Soundgarden took all the stuff that we were doing and made it more palatable, but still kept odd time signatures and weird ways of writing songs. All things that they loved about us, and were never sorry about saying. They had no problem saying where their influences came from.
So it must be validating, but is it hard not having a little bit of jealousy when they become superstars?
Those bands are much less weird than we are. We're far weirder than they are. I mean, I had always understood it. Never. I was only ever completely satisfied and happy with their massive success. Never bothered me. I felt like I was getting a lot more out of it than I ever thought I would. And I always knew that the biggest mistake you can make is thinking you deserve more than you actually get. I think I said that be happy with what you get, not with what you think you should get. I just have never stopped believing that. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with my place in the world. It's fine. And I'm not Chris Cornell or Kurt Cobain. I don't look like I got those guys. I'm never did.
You're also still around.
I'm still around. So who wins? Ultimately, I mean, if I have to go back to it, especially with the Cobain thing, I would rather have him be unfamous and alive than massively famous and dead. That doesn't do me any good. It's just, I'm not, I don't look at it from the Courtney Love-esque perspective. Like everyone's jealous of everybody else's fame. I'm not her. I'm the exact opposite of her. Anything that she thinks, I have to think the opposite or I'm wrong. If you start realizing you're agreeing with her on any level, then you're fucking wrong. You better rethink it. No matter what it is, whether it's fashion or movies or music or just lifestyle, if you're agreeing with her on any level, you are wrong. You're screwed up. You gotta start over, or you're gonna end up in a seriously fucked up place. Because that kind of thinking only makes you worse.